All right, folks, there's a lot going on in the world, and we'll be talking about that here on a World Edition and all along those lines. So definitely we'll see what folks have to say about a number of these news stories that are being reported on and what folks' attitudes and thoughts about them are. Ukraine sees sweeping protests over a bill weakening anti corruption agencies. Protests flare in Ukraine after the government curbs corruption watchdogs. Zelensky faces outcries after signing a bill curbing Ukraine's anti corruption agencies. And that is definitely something that is in the news. And in a landmark opinion, the World Court says climate change is an existential threat. So global climate action is at stake in the UN top court biggest ever decision. World Court hearing says climate change is urgent and an existential threat. Whether you win or lose, some fights are worth fighting. The largest ever climate cases unlikely origins is what was being reported in the BBC and all along those lines. UK and Turkey signed a preliminary deal for Eurofighter Typhoon fighter jets and everything like that. So that is definitely one of the stories that folks are paying attention to as well. So the UK selling will be UK to sell Typhoons to Turkey after Germany drops the veto and all along those lines. So Turkey and Britain have signed a preliminary deal for Eurofighter Typhoon jets, and that is something that is being reported in the news as well. So definitely that's something that folks are paying attention to. Gaza doctors becoming too weak to treat patients as hunger crisis deepens in that part of the Middle East. Foreign ministry dismisses aid group alarm over mass starvation in Gaza and accuses them of serving Hamas. So it looks like Israel earlier today pounded Gaza as forced starvation killed 10 more Palestinians. And Britain moves to curb migrant trafficking and ease anger at home. So the UK sanctions targets people smugglers, small boat dealers in a migrant crackdown, and gang leaders are among the first to be hit by the small boat sanctions. So that's something that folks are talking about as well. And science and local sleuthing identify a 250-year-old shipwreck on a Scottish island. So they found a very old shipwreck. So a long-lived and lucky ship wrecked off Orkney was at Siege of Quebec. Experts find so shipwreck was found by a schoolboy on a Scottish island, identified as the Revolutionary War frigate, later used to hunt whales in the Arctic. So that is something that folks found, and apparently it was a young student that found this as well. And Choi Malachai was convicted for biting off her sexual attacker's tongue in 1964. She may finally clear her name. So, apology for a South Korean woman convicted of biting the man's tongue as he attacked her. So, prosecution seeks acquittal for Sho Mao Jai, 61 years old, as well 61 years, I should say, after biting the rapist's tongue. So, definitely that is something that is going on as well. And with Russia and Ukraine to meet again, is to know about those peace talks. So apparently, there's peace talks going on, and the Kremlin watches Trump as Russia and Ukraine hold a third round of ceasefire talks. So that is definitely something that folks are talking about as well. And Chinese and EU leaders are about to meet, but the U.S. is complicating things. So there are some people, including some of the South China Morning Post, that are saying why EU expectations are so low ahead of Trump summit with China. So definitely we'll see what goes on in that space. And Germany is calling for a French nuclear protection, and apparently that's getting a reality check. And AFP journalists warn their last reporter will die working in the current Gaza situation or current Gaza conditions. And the agency France Presse says it wants to pull its hunger-stricken journalists out of Gaza. So there are some folks that have even reporting on this that are concerned as well. And there's still the report, and I know Sharif may have more news on that, about the Bangladesh Air Force fighter jet that crashed into the school campus and all along those lines. So definitely folks are continuing to mourn that tragedy and all in that way. And Greece has condemned an outrageous protest that barred an Israeli cruise ship from docking. Anti-Semitism will not be tolerated. So protests against Gaza war prevents Israeli visitors from touring the Greek island. Israeli stuck on a cruise ship by Greek pro-Palestinian rally. So definitely that is what's going on in that part of the world. And China clearly trying to interfere in Taiwan's democracy. That is what Taipei says. And a total recall, campaigners employ quirk of Taiwan's political system to turn on a pro-China candidate. So Taiwan's once dominant KMT falls out of step with the electorate, and the populist overreach in Taiwan is a growing risk for regional security. And it looks like the WHO, the World Health Organization, will be expanding medical services after staff resistance in Gaza attack by IDF. And the U.S. Army drops into Australia for massive war games. So Marines and Aussies provide new details on Army SM-6 anti-ship missile test. So in the Pacific First, Army's new launcher fires a missile at a maritime target. And so definitely that's something that is going on as well. And Russian lawmakers passed a bill punishing online searches for information deemed to be extremist. So Russia defined people for searching for extremist content. So Russia passed this law penalizing online searches for what they deem to be extremist content, including via VPNs and all in that way. So definitely that is something that folks are talking about as well. And EU to raise ETI age travel fees by to £20 by 2026. So new interest fee to visit Europe set to triple, says the European Commission. So definitely that is something that is going on as Australia's parliament resumes with pro-Palestinian protests and calls for Israeli sanctions. Maureen Farouki sanctioned for Gaza sign protest as Green senator accused of street theater. So Senate punishes Green senator over the Gaza protests as it happened. So a lot's going on, including a lot going on in Iran in Australia as well. So a lot's taking place on that side of the world. I'm gonna bring in Sasha, see what he's got going on as well, because we do have a lot of things taking place and all in that way. Excuse me. How are you gentlemen doing and everything?
Yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
Mark.
Good.
We are fine.
What's going on in Bangladesh? We'll get that going while I try to see what else is going on. So tell us what's going on in your neck of the woods, Sharif.
Yeah, right now Bangladesh situation not so good, especially the aircraft crash in the school. What I understand, many students died, many students injured. Few teachers also died through this uh, process. But most important factor is that the people of Bangladesh they do not take it positively. All of the people, it's a heartbroken things, right? Like if you have your children and they go to school, school is the place where the students actually grow, the young people actually grow, but they died because of the irresponsible plan and all of the things. So it's actually create a very negative impact against definitely the Air Force, against governments, and against all of the political activities. Because uh, even few sessions I shared that I do not like the political activities anymore because how I see these political corruptions, it's actually took lot of people lives. The political corruptions actually took a lot of because just 1 year before, 1,400 Bangladeshi young people they died. 1,400. Can you imagine in the road? Uh, People killed around 1,400 Bangladeshi people. This July, uh, like hundred of people injured, 40 people died. It's actually very pathetic. So what we understand, maybe our political responsible person, even though he win Nobel Prize for peace, uh, I don't know why the Western world choose all of the people like he is. They are not responsible at all. They do not think positively. Even I think that when they go to power, uh, everybody becomes stupid. They do not know what to do. They do not know what is the right. When they are outside the power, they are very capable. They do know. They know what to do. Even they can win Nobel Prize and all of the things from a small country. But when they go to power, they get their powerful chair and all of the things. they are not responsible at all. So, uh, just I'm very emotional on that point because just few months ago we lost our first child, and I can understand the mother and the parents. Uh,
Hold on, folks. When I switch phones, a little bit of
Sorry about that. Uh, but the things is that we have to understand the emotion of the parents. They send their children for safety and all of the things, but uh, uh, the people we cannot take care. The political organizations or the air force and defense, they cannot take care of these things. So I can understand that politics. It's in North America. It's in Bangladesh. It's in China. I do not know what's happening with all of the political things, but I believe this is high time we need to change the process and we need to protect our people. And definitely, Bangladesh government has to be more concerned about the people lives. So I'm sorry, the situation is very bad in Bangladesh.
It sounds like it's very bad there in Bangladesh and everything like that. By the way, in some of the other stories, it looks like Mike Johnson, is trying to contain Epstein dissent. So definitely that is going on. The U.S. House has called an early summer recess to block voting on the release of the Epstein files. So I guess we won't get the release of the Epstein files till after they come back to the next session and everything like that. And Brian Koberger has been sentenced in the killing of four Idaho students. Well, he will be sentenced, I should say, and all along those lines. So definitely he'll have another chance to explain why he killed those four Idaho college students, but he doesn't have to speak. And so definitely that's what folks are waiting to see what he has to say in, I guess, in his defense or what his reasoning. And all along those lines. And lawmakers are calling for the release of an Afghan man seized by ICE at his green card appointment. And I think that Jacoby had mentioned that yesterday. And apparently, MAGA is clamoring for the arrest as Trump accuses Obama of treason. So Trump accuses Obama of treason, and definitely that is getting a lot of uproar from a lot of people as well. So we'll see what goes on in that space as well. So how are you doing, Sasha? I know we talked yesterday on the Russia Ukraine show, but is there any new developments in that part of the world?
Okay, that part of the world, there are now some so-called peace talks starting today in Istanbul. Nothing is expected of this. Perhaps the best case scenario, there will be prisoner exchange, and that's about it. Now you mentioned something about the Epstein files
Right.
earlier. This is, I'm trying to compare it to something similar in the United States history. There's perhaps Watergate
Right.
comes to mind. But this is this is far bigger than Watergate. Come on, Watergate. So there are some tapes. So they wanted to spy on competing party. That's not a big deal. What is a big deal now is that the files are being shown at different times to well over 1,000 people from FBI, CIA, and other officials. When so many people saw these files and what's in them, it doesn't matter anymore that Trump, whether he was on these pictures, on the files, and or not, whether he was part of this pedophile. By the way, the Epstein organization, Epstein is by far the most successful pimp in the history of the world. Nobody became so famous, successful as Epstein by being a pimp. That's all. So, among his customers, there is a list starting with the most well known and respected US officials and leaders and what do you want to call them? they're all implicated, and now it doesn't really matter. The fact is that Trump was his friend. It's obvious. You don't have to prove it, and by proving that, you're going nowhere anywhere because the Trump doesn't care about it. There is no implication of impeachment, although I have to be careful with that. In fact, indeed, all that could lead to impeachment if there was such a successful pimp as Epstein, and Trump was his best friend, and then it will evolve into what he knew and how often he fly to Little James Island and elsewhere. Rick, continue.
So
Just really quickly
Trump's
before you,
Trump's approval is at the lowest point of his presidency. He's at more than negative net 10%. He's more than 53% of Americans, according to polling aggregator Nate Silver, disapprove of the job he's doing, and 43% approve.
but isn't
Which
part of the
is,
and Rick, isn't part of the problem with that though is that he's got a solid base? Because I read somewhere it might have been on or heard somewhere it might have been on one of the other TV stations that he's got like 95% among his
yeah,
MAGA.
he can say that. It's 89%, according to a legit survey I saw. He'll lie and say 95, the highest ever, but Republicans are only 25% of U.S. voters. Half of U.S. voters are independent. Another quarter of them are Democrats. I mean, okay, so he's got solid support among Republicans, and the Republicans hold the House and the Senate. So, that's not worth nothing. It makes it hard to,
Again,
budge
like
him.
which Sasha was talking about. Hey, Sasha, I know later on today, in about another 2.5 hours, we'll have modern investment and all along those lines. But one of the things that happened today that I guess some people are saying was a good thing, even though there's mixed messages coming from it. But there was an election very bad defeat from the Japanese and their prime minister. And there was even talk that he may quit, but I've heard mixed signals. Some saying that he will fall on the sword and quit. Some saying that he will stay in office. But one of the things that happened was there was a U.S. Japan trade deal where they're saying that they agreed on a trade deal to reduce tariffs to 15%. And after that happened, the Dow, which I know y'all talk about some, opened higher. So what is your take on this? Because even Basant, who I think is one of the financial people in the Trump administration, hails the finance and pitch in Japan deal as the EU talks to loom. So I guess they're hoping that this will get the economy going even more so. But what is your take on this trade deal?
No, that deal will not help U.S. economy, and any other trade deals will not help U.S. economy. But it will help stock market because there's just so many days left before the deadline of August 1st. He cannot afford to be chicken again and run and extend the deadline and so on. He cannot do that because the stock or trade, Trump always chickens out. He cannot afford to do that anymore. So he has to jump on a sword and make deals, good deals, bad deals, whatever deals. The most painful for him and MAGA is that countries like Canada and European Union, they are um, doing very selective harm to US by attacking the productions which are in the red states. It's, for example, bourbon. It's other products that are being produced mainly in Republican states. So they want to destabilize U.S. economy to let as many people in the states to test their own medicine, and they are very, very good at targeting these states with their actions.
Hey, Sasha, along those same lines, it looks like the EU is preparing if I'm reading this correctly, £100 billion no deal plan to match Trump's threats of 30% tariffs on some of those European countries and all along those lines. So apparently this is the countermeasure that the EU is putting out there. So how is this going to work, and will this be an effective way to counter what Trump is trying to do?
I would go farther. I would put, instead of 100%, 150%, just to make the man feel the pain. And get this, Canada most likely will be part of it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Canada could be part of it as well and everything like that. Hey, Rick, what's your take on all this stuff about Hunter Biden? Because he's back in the news, and apparently it's about Ambien and things along those lines. So I know that some folks are trying to do that.
All right, all right. So what the major bit of evidence that Biden was losing it was how loopy, woozy, weak he appeared during the debate with Trump. Now, there was some other stuff where Clooney and Kimmel and a bunch of Hollywood people were at a function, and Clooney claimed that Biden didn't recognize him. But if you look at the footage, it's hard to tell what's going on. But Hunter Biden saying that that his dad had been flying all around the world on diplomacy,
Right.
and to help him sleep on Air Force One, they'd given him Ambien. And this, I don't know how competent his medical team was or is at dealing with old age. If you haven't worked with old people, there are a bunch of booby traps that for instance, Ambien, if you're 80 years old, takes longer to wear off. So they gave him a drug that would make him woozy. And also, if you get a cold or a bladder infection, a UTI, that can make you loopy. And I'm not sure his medical people are geriatric specialists, which they should have been. But it makes sense. If you look at all his various appearances, he never looked as effed up as he did during that night, which makes me think he had a temporary issue. And so I kind of agree with Hunter Biden that the kicking him out of the race based on one night was kind of bullshit.
Yeah, hey,
But
Rick,
it's incompetent of his team. When they saw how loopy he was, they should have canceled or postponed the debate.
yeah, that makes sense. Hey, Rick, along those same lines and everything, I heard when I think we talked about Stephen Colbert yesterday that there's the possibility that he may, because he's got a deadline of ending in about 10 months, but he may be moving to MSNBC. At least that's one of the rumors going around and everything. So what do you think?
He's got 10 months to go, and he's not pulling any punches. That's I think all the late night shows do 4 shows a week, Monday, Thursday, and then a repeat on Friday.
Right.
So 10 months times 17 shows a month roughly. He's got 170 shots to take at Trump in his monologue. And, I think he's going to enjoy just ripping into Trump, dozens and dozens more times before he leaves. He may try to get so, not last night, the night before last, he told Trump to go fuck yourself. And, he's not pulling punches. And he may try to get his show, like he may kind of dare CBS to end his time there even earlier. So I kind of love it. And Kimmel is on vacation. The shows take summer hiatus. For a couple weeks in the summer, they let the staff and the host, go away for a week or two. So Kimmel has had guest hosts, but I'm eager to see what he says when he returns. And I assume that Kimmel will have Colbert on as a guest, and they'll team up to say a bunch of terrible stuff about Trump.
Yeah, I noticed that he teamed up with Sarah O. I think that was either yesterday or the day before, and everything like that. And they definitely said a lot of terrible things about Trump and all along those lines. One of the things that one of our founders had talked about is this whole notion of gender affirming care and everything like that. And apparently, in a landmark move, Children's Hospital LA has closed its gender affirming care center on yesterday.
All right. So what's happening with trans and gender stuff is that people are freaked out that they're going to get that they're trying to limit the damage, that they don't want to be in Trump's crosshairs, and so they're in a lot of instances they're willing to sacrifice trans kids to save the rest of their hospital or their medical services. I assume when they close those facilities to trans kids, they try to, under the table, work with them to find places for those kids to go to continue to get treatment.
Yeah,
But I don't think it's an unreasonable strategy. It's unfortunate for those kids, but there aren't that many trans kids compared to how many kids that hospital treats. And if they have to fuck over, 0.5% of their kids in order to save services for the other 99%, I can see them, doing that calculation.
One of the other things I know that we talked about, and apparently because of his own dealing with them, Nick has been a big fan of the cuts in PBS and NPR, but it says that Trump's cuts to public broadcasting have left 52 local Colorado stations, and Rick, I know you've got some ties to Colorado, staring at some serious debt, and they're saying community radio stations are collateral damage as Congress cuts NPR funding, and with federal funding cuts, for example, KUT and KUTX will lose.
So you're in radio, so you know what?
Annual budgets.
You've been in radio for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what happened with Clear Channel and where there used to be a bunch of independently owned little teeny radio stations.
Yes.
And the economics of running and owning a station became tough. And the big guys like Clear Channel sweep in and they buy all the little ones and they get rid of the humans and they replace, the human DJs with, automated stuff or with prepackaged material, so so I assume that's what's going to happen with public TV stations.
That's what probably happened there. And then the other thing that happens is that depending on the economy, like I said later on, Sasha and others will be talking about the economy on modern investment, but depending on the individual economy, a lot of times stations can be hit by that. So it's not just government funding, but also the pocketbooks of individuals as well. I know even in my own parents' radio station, that was the kind of like the last nail, was that we were in the middle of a recession. So there was a severe decline in people's donations and everything. So if the government isn't helping and then you have a severe decline in donations, a lot of those stations will probably fall into the crosshairs and wind up disappearing.
But it's the same as newspapers, where little teeny small town news, you've got a town that has 8,000 people, and they were formerly able to support a newspaper with local reporters with local advertising. Now that doesn't work. That model got busted. And so now maybe the newspaper goes away altogether, or the newspaper, doesn't have local reporters and it just takes all its stories from national feeds, and in some cases AI, and maybe they've got one reporter left to report on high school sports.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Sasha, one of the things I know we talked about several times on this network and everything is these protests. I said there was some protests in Australia that I guess were pro-Palestinian, that were even members of the party, meaning one of the parties that exist in Australia and all along those lines. But it looks like some of these schools, colleges and stuff are punishing students that were involved in protests. For example, in actually, as they said, Colombia punished students involved in pro-Palestinian protests, and they sanctioned more than 70 students for campus protests as it's trying to get its federal funds restored. So since they want their federal funds restored, they are doing things in terms of going after students that were protesting, whether that was for Palestine or whether that was for other things as well. So I just wanted your take on this notion of punishing the protesters in order to get your money back.
I guess a lot of these protesters are students. And students, they probably get some funds, whether it's loans or whether some other incentives, some help for them to get an education. So by protesting instead of being part of educational protest, they most likely violate the terms of the loans and other bursaries or whatever they are getting. And for that, there have to be financial implications on them, which would probably make them to protest a little bit less and get their attention and focus to education, for which is the reason why they are there, not to protest. So a hell with protesters, punish them, and explain to them what they should have done differently, get them study, and if not, expel them from the universities where they are and let them do the work, real work in real world, so they will not have enough time to protest.
Hey,
Nobody needs this protest.
hey, Sasha, just along those same lines and everything, because I know when I was in college back in the early '80s, and I know that was decades ago and everything like that, that there was, I was a member of Amnesty International. There was a campus chapter of Amnesty International. I was a member of a couple of other organizations, including some that might have dealt with police violence, because there was definitely some police violence things going on even at that time and everything like that. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you would, if you had your way, I'm just saying Sasha Starr's way and everything, there would be no political organizations on campus at all. So there would be no young
Absolutely not. And I'll
Democrats,
tell you
no
why. A
Republicans,
lot
no
of these
anything.
people, a lot of these students, they're going into this political movement, so-called, or so on, to get a little bit on their resume
Right.
that, oh, he participated in that. Oh, yeah, he's a good man. Oh, he did this, he did that. But you know what? It doesn't work anymore. Because in today's society, if you mention that you are being part of some demonstrations and protests and so on, it will make you non-eligible for further the movement, further trying to find good jobs and being a good member in society. It will it will prevent any of that happen. So people have to avoid and run away from protests, from all these political organizations. Forget about it. You didn't go to university to be part of the political movement. Hell with you. You have to study. You have to learn. And if you don't have time to study and learn and want to be part of political movement and do protests, I would, frankly, if it would be up to me, I would arrest all
But
the students
Sasha, isn't
and
college
put them
partially
in
based
jail.
on Sasha? Isn't college partially based on the uh, not saying all colleges, but a lot of colleges based on the Greek philosophy, the Socratic way of teaching, and all along those lines. And as I recall from studying both Socrates and uh, definitely Plato and some of the others, that's part of what they were doing. Was they were having arguments around political and social issues in the square and everything along those lines. So I get it that we're in the 21st century and everything, but I'm thinking that a lot of young students are having engaging discussions into some of these political groups on their campus, whether it's Duke, because I know there are several political groups that are on Duke campus, and I live near Duke, and a lot of other groups like that. So I thought that was part of the whole purpose of education was to get conversations, some with your professors, but also in some of these groups and everything. And Rick, I think you probably went to some of those kind of organizations when you were in college. I could be wrong, but what is your thoughts on that?
Kinda. I mean, yeah, I joined student council for half a second in college, but I didn't. I wasn't politically active. The most active thing I did in college was I had a girlfriend who was a Republican, and her mom was a powerful Republican lobbyist in the Colorado at the Capitol, at the State House, and so I became a Republican for while I was dating her. I figured no big deal, but that's not really being politically active.
Well, let's not being politically active, but I'm just curious. But we can get into a discussion about that on another show at another time.
I mean,
And Brittany,
a lot of people who are politically active in college are nerdy people who, I was interested in getting girlfriends,
okay.
which I occasionally did. And I didn't see political activity as facilitating that.
Different people have, and definitely there's that whole notion because some people go to college strictly
I,
to get
I
their
have some
relationships.
I have some views about this kind of activity.
Yeah, go ahead,
Uh,
Dr. Therese.
because in my student life, I strongly engaged with debating championship. I built up our university's debating club. Then it become champions in our national television debate and all of the championship in Bangladesh. Then we go abroad for international debate, and I personally I attend in Oxford IV, in Oxford Union, in Cambridge IV, in Cambridge Union. Uh, Even in 2013, our Bangladesh, we own World Debating Championships. World Debating Championship is one of the largest intellectual activities. Around 400 teams from around the world they attend in the debating championships. Also, I organize Asia Debate Academies, and all of the intellectual people from around the world they come to these things. And from the debating communities, we see many political peoples from USA, from UK, from around the world. They actually participate in the debating activities. Even in the Thursday night, I attend in the Oxford IV and in the Cambridge IV. It's called Thursday night debate, and Thursday night debate actually something that intellectually the professional group of people do debate. But honestly speaking, freedom of speech is the way that we can do our intellectual activities. Definitely, what Sasha say, if I go for political riot, if I go for all kind of negative funding and do all of the things, this is not good. But students, if they develop their intellectual activities, if they develop their leadership activities, if they develop their organizational activities, and through debating, through maybe cultures, through maybe math olympiad or physics olympiad or all of the things, I think this is very good. We should not stop our students. That's why all of the big university has their own uh, uh, union where students come and do their intellectual activities. So I want to say this debating, these intellectual activities, and this kind of activities is good for student career, because I can remember in 2013 I developed Asia Debate Academy and I choose 307 students. And whatever the country, last 10 years I visit, even in I come to Bangladesh, wherever I go, let's say the last week, one of the American lecturer, he called me. He said, "Can you remember me?" I said, "No, I do not." He said, "Hey, I attend in your debating activities in 2013. Right now, I get a privilege and I'm very happy. I'm a lecturer and I'm in a US university. So from Bangladesh, students go to USA and become academician. This is very good. So I think this kind of intellectual activities, student activities, freedom of speech, and all of the things we should give some freedom to the students. And if you see the history, uh, every time actually the youth, the young people, they come to the front. Always they took the like lead. They sacrificed their life. Even the Bangladesh last year changed 1,400 students. Uh, they sacrificed their life for democracy. Is it for money? No, it's not for money. It's purely they love their country, right? Many people define, hey, like the old people define, hey, this is for money. They get money. I say, how come? If people died in the road and for money, it's not like that. But anyway, I definitely respect all of your views, what you are discussing about the political things. But in some point, we have to give room and give them freedom of speech to develop their leaderships and help them to grow as a catalyst.
And that's what I was kind of arguing and everything, Dr. Sharif, and we'll get to some more Canadian news in a second as well, because if you look at a lot of the movements in the country, whether it was apartheid or whether it was the civil rights movement or whether it was, I would even argue to some degree, Ukraine and other places of the world, even Tiananmen Square in China, it was oftentimes student-led protests that were the ones that were behind the activity and everything like that. So that's part of the reason that I am even Black Lives Matter had a lot of student-led part of the conversation and everything like that. So that's where I was going with it.
So I want to talk about, you mentioned defunding NPR and PBS and how it'll affect small town stations. And it's all part of the erosion of small town life.
Right.
And not just in the US, also like around the world. Bangladesh has had one of the largest movements of people from rural areas to the city. Dhaka has 25 million people, which is one of the biggest cities in the world. For a while, 400,000 people in Bangladesh every year were moving out of the countryside and into Dhaka. And it's part of it is because of climate change, because you guys have something like 700 rivers. All of Bangladesh is a giant river delta where, and as you need people in small towns for farming, but often when there's flooding, those people get pushed out of those towns and into cities. And this is a worldwide thing. China has been doing it on purpose for decades. And the US, like part of like small town life, keeps people from going crazy because you're interacting with people, in your local diner, you're, on the streets, in the grocery store. And then when you push people out of the little towns into big cities, they lose their friendship networks, and they start to get their information from, the internet. And that makes people vulnerable to be bullshitted and be alienated.
Well, speaking of bullshit and everything like that, apparently Mark Carney says, and this was earlier today, that Canada won't settle for a bad deal on U.S. tariffs. It says it won't accept a trade deal with the U.S. at any cost and everything like that. So I guess they're lowering their expectations for a Trump deal by August 1st. And I think you had alluded to that earlier, Sasha. So what is your take on Mark Carney's leadership in this particular case? Because he's saying, nope, I'm not taking your deal. It's going to be a bad deal, and I'm not taking it at all.
I think that this is a great discovery for Mark Carney, the Canadians' reaction to Trump's actions. I think it took him by surprise because there is a roots movement to boycott all U.S. production, period. It doesn't matter if it's industrial or it's the agricultural, or just doesn't matter. Anything American is not being bought. And there is no such a campaign, buy Canadian, don't buy American. There is no campaign, really. If you look around, you don't see any anti-American, so-called propaganda or anything that would suggest that. No, it's a movement by people. It's a Canadian people's movement. They understand that nothing will hurt the U.S. counterparts, U.S. people, as strategy of not buying any American product. That will hurt neighboring states, farmers, and then politicians, and so on. So this is kind of an effect, and I already heard some U.S. officials start to complain that there's a widespread Canadian boycott on American products. It might as well be, but if it's coming natural from the roots, from the people, from Canadian people in this case, there is very little could be done about it.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense and everything like that. I know another issue that we've talked about, and then I've got a sad, but it has a lighthearted part of it as well. News that come out of the world of politics and everything, but it definitely has some unusual twist to it and everything. But before I get to that, one of the things that we talked about on the network a lot is the whole notion of police violence. As a matter of fact, my other job, they had a film that they showed yesterday that talked about the evangelicals communities kind of reaction to the George Floyds and the different other cases that have taken place. And apparently there was another one that just went viral down in Jacksonville, Florida. So there's Florida police are under fire. It's a video of a African-American man being punched and dragged by police deputies during a traffic stop has gone viral, but the Florida officer was suspended over that viral traffic stop footage. And even the Jacksonville Sheriff TK Waters released body cam video of the violent stop that was back in February and everything. So it looks like a part of what's going on is that both the policemen themselves and the citizens have cameras on them. So a lot of times when these things happen, it is automatically documented, and then that puts them in hot water. So, Rick, what's your take on not just that case, but those cases in general? It was a very enlightening discussion that they had yesterday in my other job and everything like that, because it was a bunch of.
We know that thanks to police unions, that without video footage, and sometimes even with, cops get off.
Right.
Even when they do stuff that's egregious, people are still fighting about the guy who Derek Chauvin, the
Right.
cop who choked George Floyd to death by putting his knee into the guy's neck for what, 9.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so he's in prison for more than 20 years for murder, but idiots on the right are still saying, well, that's not what and so the video is necessary. So it's a welcome, it's a welcome new thing in the history of policing.
And if you look it up, I think there was and this might have been with a white individual, a George Floyd-like incident that took place recently. It might have been in the last day or two, because they were saying that another person was stopped recently and that they were choked as well. So I do know that was reported recently, of this George Floyd-like incident that I saw come across my news feed.
Can we go back to Canada for a second?
Yes.
Canada is freaking self-sufficient. Canada is a rich nation. The U.S. Per capita income of 82,000. Canada is 61,000, except that the Canadian dollar is worth about 3/4 of the U.S. dollar. So Canadians make as much in Canadian dollars as Americans make in American dollars, and Canada will be fine if they say F off to the U.S. for years at a time. Unlike, say, Mexico, where per capita income is $25,000. The Canadians, and Sasha, you back me up or not, you guys can live perfectly well without, even with trade to the U.S. cut off.
Well, what's interesting happening right now is that Canada, you see, because it's so close to U.S. and so much smaller in at least population and economically than U.S., that for Canada it was very convenient to trade with U.S. only. It's easy to deliver. Okay, you're doing that by truck, for example, then you stop somewhere with your purchaser, and you'll have a beer together and laugh and have a good time, and then you drive the truck back. So that small time mentality was quite prevalent among Canadians until recently, when Donald Trump said that he wants to take over Canada, when he started imposing these tariffs, and he is violating his own treaty that in first cadence he signed with Canada and Mexico. He is completely violating it. It's never existed. So when Canadians found out about it, there became this movement. First of all, to terminate ties with US. Canada was almost 100% supplier of its oil and gas resources to US. Not anymore. Canada already made first 2 shipments to China and Japan of its oil products. There was a special pipeline was finished early this year from Alberta to Vancouver area port. Now the all premiers of provinces of Canada had a meeting with Prime Minister Carney to discuss how Canada has to be united against United States. Get green line on very fast building of a pipeline to East Coast, so they will supply European Union with oil and liquefied gas. So essentially, Canada and European Union. See, look, you have to understand the economy of Canada. Canada is like a small United States. They produce. There's no product that could be produced except maybe these B-2 bombers. Other than that, industrial products. Canada can produce everything what US can produce, but on a much smaller scale. So that if there will be orders, and now European Union and South Korea and Japan, everybody is sourcing Canada for industrial products that they normally would buy from United States, and now they want to source similar or same products in Canada, and Canada has pledged it over. In some cases, all needed is to increase production.
If you watch the first meeting that Carney had with the provincial ministers, in the past there was always friction, because Ottawa wanted stuff that maybe the provinces. I was kind of pleasantly surprised at all the ministers, typically the ones in the West, kind of push back a bit or a lot sometimes. Surprisingly, they came out totally united. And they're talking about, setting up fast tracking projects to do rather than north-south trade with the states. They're going to go east-west. So that's good to hear as a Canadian.
And the tariffs could be good for Canada because it'll encourage internal development. So something like, more than half of the Canadian population lives within 80 miles of the U.S. border, because the further north you go, the colder it gets. So, but if the tariffs, will force Canadians to source manufacturing and resources from their own cities like Calgary, Edmonton, Saskatoon, these more northern, there's not that northern, but more northern cities where instead of taking the easy way and going to the US, you guys develop your own,
develop their own market and everything like that. So that sounds like that's what's going to be happening.
From my side, I want to add some points, especially from Asia, because maybe Jatovi comes, or Sasha or Rick, you can cover some point about tariff, because this is very important discussion for Asia. What I see right now, a series of US-Asia trade agreement now cover Japan, Philippines, and Indonesia, and negotiation continue with China. But the key players like India, South Korea, and Thailand are still without deals, hitting economic uncertainty. On the other hand, based on the Asia Development Bank, predictions for 2025-2026 growth projections for developing Asia, due to higher tariff, geopolitical strain, and China property slowdown, Southeast Asia is now expected to grow 4.2 in 2025, down from 4.7, and 4.3 2006. So, if you give some of your view about tariff on an Asian business relationship, maybe it will be interesting for our audience. Yeah.
Not sure what
We could mention Susan Sarandon from 2016. Susan Sarandon's, famous, very good actor. And she said that people should vote for Trump because Trump is an idiot, and if elected, he will burn down the country and pretty much vaccinate us against idiots in the White House. And people got really pissed at her, as they should have, because you don't want to give Trump any help. And Trump did kind of burn down the country, but he didn't vaccinate us against idiots because he got reelected 8 years later.
They got reelected 8 years later.
But she does have half of a point, because Trump is burning down our economy, our international trade. He's a frickin' disaster. He's doing very little that's helpful to the U.S., and we can hope that increasing numbers of people see that he's a frickin' terrible president.
Just want to tell you one very interesting story. What happened just a couple of days ago? The 3 world-leading airlines, such as KLM, it's Dutch, it's Qantas, Australian airline, and it's Emirates,
Yeah.
Middle East airline, but three very, very popular, very good airlines. They made together, it's very interesting, they made together announcement that they completely switch from Boeing to Airbus. And they will not have any deals with Boeing for the next 30 years. So if one of these airlines would do it, okay, so they had some friction with Boeing, okay, they did make a deal, that I understand. But three airlines at the same time, that means something. This shows the decline of American soft power on international scene.
Yeah, it definitely shows that and everything. Hey, Toby, just really quickly, we've only got a few minutes to go, and I was going to get to the other story that had a sad note, but also a kind of unusual note as well. But what's your take on this notion? Because even with the George Floyd situation, we were talking about that earlier. If there are people that are saying that they are in a George Floyd-like situation and they are from the other ethnic group and everything, then it can possibly water down some of these cases and everything. Because an Alabama family is calling for accountability after a 52-year-old man died while being detained by police, and he even had that same "I can't breathe" quote, and his wife is claiming he called that out at least 3 times during his stop as the Irondale police officer kneeled on the back of his neck for 3 minutes. So they are definitely claiming a similar situation to what George Floyd went to. And like I said, this is a white gentleman, whereas Floyd was a black. So is that going to water down some of these claims if we get the folks that are of other races that are claiming similar situations by the police?
Toby's muted.
No, I don't think it's going to water it down. I think the problem is that we're not actually being honest about the situations, and we're not taking into account what has happened. And until we actually look at the data that's there, the statistics that are already out there, the documented cases that are there, instead of getting into the idea that hey, they're lying because they're wanting attention. I mean, we just have to be honest. This honestly is going to harken back. With the bad part is, this is going to harken back to the old adage that has been out there, because there are many missing black children, but nobody makes the news until it's a missing white child.
Right.
That's what it's going to harken back to. And people are going to accept the "I can't breathe" thing for 3 minutes, but they're not going to accept what happened to George Floyd. That's just the world we live in, especially when the Breonna Taylor case the big thing that happened with there is that the Justice Department recommends 1 day for the individual in that case, which is outlandish and insulting, but it sets a bad precedent. So again, if a situation happens with a white individual that was placed in Breonna Taylor's situation, there's not going to be a recommendation for them 1 day. But that's just the way it is right now.
One problem with one problem with policing right now is you've got an empowered ICE, where you've got tens of thousands more bad cops doing bad cop stuff. So it's a flood of stories of abuse coming in, and it's hard to focus on any one of them.
Even more so, here, just add another layer to that. You have an empowered police force, a brand new special police force that's put out there, as he said, doing bad things. But who are they doing bad things to? Brown people.
And that was actually coming out with some of the.
And that's been accepted. And that's the sad part. That's why, again, it's always going to harken back to that separation and division, because we're never actually dealing with that separation and division, and we're not being honest about it.
We're going a little bit over, not much over, but just to add to that really quickly, the other thing that the police have to deal with that has been talked about on this show and other shows is mental health. And apparently this gentleman had some mental health crisis as well. So that's something else that police oftentimes are not prepared to deal with, is whatever people's mental health issues are. And all along
That was all part of the defund police movement, which again, that's a poor name for it because it really wasn't defunding the police. All it was giving extra tools to the police force, like individuals to deal with those who do have mental health
It
issues.
should have been called specialize the police instead of defund the police.
Defunded.
Yeah, I mean, it should have had a different name, but yeah, this was the funding that they wanted to have happen to help with individuals with special needs. Because there was a kid, remember, there was a black gentleman that was shot on the ground. He was actually helping an individual with special needs, but he was shot.
Yep. Just really quickly, and the last thing, then we'll have modern investment at 1:00, and it's the story I was going to get to and everything. There was a plane that crashed and killed the husband of an ex-representative, Mary Peltola, and everything like that. But Rick, this I do not get, because I thought that you were supposed to have regulations as to what you allow on a plane and everything, but apparently this plane was overloaded with moose meat and antlers. So that's part of the reason the plane went down, is that it had too much.
People have been Aaliyah, the singer.
Right.
Her people, idiots will do idiot stuff. She died because of an overloaded plane.
Right, and that's what this was. It was an overloaded plane with, like I said, moose items. I think they were
Yeah,
flying.
it is a terrible reason to die.
Right. I think they were flying to Alaska, so that makes sense. You would be having moose meat going back to Alaska and everything like that. But on that note, it's been a very enlightening discussion. I know we'll have modern investment. I think we have the usual suspects. Is that correct, Sasha? We'll have Sasha.
Yes.
We'll have Milan, you, and
Usual.
Jimmy.
Yeah.
All right. And on that note, we're going to get on out of here, and we'll see Sasha later on in about less than 2 hours.
Thank you.
No problem.
Bye bye, everybody.